Oh yes, now this is the authentic Seoul experience. What I'm doing right now is the equivalent to eating a warm croissant on the bank of the River Seine, eating strawberries and cream while watching Wimbledon, or getting your phone nicked in Barcelona. This is the new Hyundai Inster, and I think it is comfortably one of the best small cars ever made. And I do appreciate that sounds exactly like the sort of superlative platitude that YouTubers love throwing out at the start of videos, but I am so serious about this. Think of all the reasons that people buy small, inexpensive cars, the essentials, the non-negotiables, and then the bonus stuff that it's nice to have. This car nails the brief, unlike anything I've ever driven. It is just so good and so small and so good at being small that you get out of it wondering why on earth you'd need anything more. Welcome to the Hyundai Inster, welcome to Seoul, and welcome to the Fully Charged Show. Oh yes, at long last, we finally got our hands on it. Welcome one and all to the Hyundai Inster. I have been enchanted with this little car ever since I first clapped eyes on it in a studio a few months ago. It has been #1 car on my list that I've been so excited to drive, and today is the day. This is bad YouTubing. What you're supposed to do is kind of go, ooh, what do I think, and save the verdict till the end, but I'm putting my cards on the table right now. I adore this thing, and I think you will too by the time we get to the end of this video. So what do you need to know? Well, first of all, it's not called the Inster, not here. Here, it's the Casper. Everywhere else, Inster, for copyright reasons pertaining to a friendly ghost, one assumes. And it's actually not a new car in Korea. This is the latest generation, but there have been previous iterations. You see them all over the place here in Seoul. The difference is it used to be petrol only, of course, whereas this sucker's electrical. It's also 180mm longer in the wheelbase than its predecessor, although still very, very, very small. And the mind-blowing thing is that here in Korea, this is still an ICE car or an EV, everywhere else electric only. But the point is, this sits on a multi-energy platform. And when you see how much space there is inside, that is mind-blowing. And just to refresh your memory, this car is going to be available with 2 different battery sizes when it arrives in the UK, 42 or 49 kilowatt hours, good for, Hyundai says, 180 or 220 miles of range. We'll talk about the real range a little bit later on. But decent range, that's properly usable, not just city car range. At that price point, there is still so little as far as electric cars. You've got the Citroen EC3, so then the little Dacia Spring way below at £15,000, but that is a city car only. This is a different proposition. The really surprising thing about this car is that it's quite fancy. It feels quite premium. There's a lot of ionic-ness, not just in terms of the styling, but the interior. And again, we'll get to that shortly. Now, we won't do a full design walk around because we did that in the studio. Let me just say this, look at it. Look at this little chunk of magnificence. Just parked over there is a Kia Ray, which is a much more traditional K car. They're built on the same fundamental principles, which is small as possible on the outside, big as possible on the inside. And what that usually results in is a very short, very narrow, very tall vehicle. Any car designer will tell you the formula for really pretty cars is low and wide and long. So this is a really difficult shape to make look good. And yet, it's fabulous. Sure, there's a couple of slightly weird angles. I'm getting a little bit of Suzuki Wagon R from this back third. If you know, you know. But all in all, I just think it's delightful. This, by the way, don't get too attached to this. The little smiley face badge on the back door. We don't get those. Those are Korean market only, as with the Casper badge on the back. Now then, out on the road in the Hyundai Inster. And the first thing we need to do is just get the obvious out of the way and talk about how blissful this car is to drive around town. Where we're staying in Seoul, just near Gangnam, is really, really busy. Big shopping district, teeny, narrow little streets. You've got delivery vans, you've got mopeds, you've got lots of people on feet, everyone going in different directions, no clear sense of lanes or pavement and roads. It's a wonderful, chaotic mess. And yesterday I was navigating said streets in the new Kia EV3, a positively medium-sized car, but I may as well have been driving a double-decker bus with the steering wheel on backwards. It was impossible. It was so stressful and the car felt too big and I couldn't tell where the nose ended, and it was not a fun experience. And then I get in this thing today and it's a completely different story. Not only is it far less stressful, I could actually drive it twice as fast because I was so much more confident because it's so small, because of the wonderfully tight turning circle and the excellent visibility and the compact dimensions. And even if I've got a really, really tight gap to squeeze through, I can just press this and then I've got phenomenal cameras to help me out as well. Get the top-down view. It could not have been easier to squeeze this little car down those, frankly, quite sketchy back streets. So it's very good around town. Of course it is. Look at it. That's what it's clearly made for first and foremost. The question is, how does it fare once you get out of town and onto some faster roads? Because that is often where small, cheap city cars fall apart. The little Dacia Spring I drove this summer. Lovely thing when you're going slowly, but as soon as you go north of 50 miles per hour, it starts to get a bit wind noisy and it starts to kind of float a bit, and you have to do a lot of steering to keep it in a straight line, and it's a bit unsettling. It doesn't feel like it's made for that. But I'm happy to say that is not the case with the little Inster. This thing is just as refined at 60 kilometers per hour or motorway speed as it is pootling around town. We're doing 70 kph right now. It's still very quiet. The car is nice and stable. It's still very comfortable. I've got my radar guided cruise control. It will keep me in lane if I want it to. You'd be perfectly happy doing a little motorway stint in the Inster. Again, just so surprised by the feeling of refinement in this teeny cheap car. Worth noting as well, it's no slouch, at least on paper. This car has, I believe, 116 horsepower, which is sort of more than I was expecting for a little teeny weeny affordable city car. And given its dimensions and that power figure, I was thinking, okay, do we have a new iteration of the Fiat Panda 100 HP here? Is this going to be a kind of warm hatch? Well, let's put our foot down. No, is the answer. No. The throttle mapping is very smooth and progressive. I get the feeling that if they wanted this car to be faster, they could have mapped the throttle differently, but then it would be spiky. And that's not what this car's about. It's not trying to be sporty at all. In fact, I've been driving it in eco mode all day because it just feels like the right setting for this kind of car. I feel no obligation to do anything remotely sporty. Right, I want to do a very quick piece just showcasing the ridiculous amount of space in this 3.8 metre long car. Barely bigger than a Fiat 500, this thing. Have you ever got in the back of a Fiat 500? You can get stuck there pretty easy. Now, again, 6'6", just about. Unusually tall man, unusually small car. And yet, let's just go through this, starting from the front seats. Of course, there's plenty of room in the front. You'd hope so. This is the seat in my position. Nice and comfortable, no problems at all. I'm going to move it very slightly forward. Let's say I had a passenger. I could very happily drive like this, and that's being nice, you know, giving a little bit more room to the person behind me. But what if the person behind me is also huge? Well, turns out that's not really a problem because, look, flat floor, easy to get in. I can tuck my feet under the seats. That's really, really decent. I'm properly comfortable here, headroom and legroom wise. And if a normal sized person was driving, I'd have tons of space. This is astonishing. But the most amazing thing is it also somehow has a rather handy boot. Now that, right now, sorry, it's a bit of a mess, camera gear, is 280 litres. The reason it's 280 litres is we've got the back seats slid all the way back, because you can do that, you can slide them back. But if I do this, slide them forward, and if I were to do the same on the other side, you would then have 350 litres of boot space in this teeny little car. But wait, there's more. Just going to throw Andy's camera out the way, because if you unclip these boys, you have seats that would fold flat were the front driver's seat not pushed so far back. Give me a minute. And suddenly through the power of editing, we have a perfectly flat rear seat there. Look how there's even a little fabric cover so there isn't a gap for your stuff to disappear down. You end up with a minivan. You can fold the front seats down as well and camp in the flipping thing. It's unbelievable. Now let's talk efficiency and real world range. This is quite interesting. We've done a real combination of roads today. We've done a little bit of city, a little bit of highway, and now we're on some sweeping country A roads. And across the combination of those, we have done 7 kilometers to the kilowatt hour today. That is 4.4 miles to the kilowatt hour. And with that efficiency, which by the way, we've not been driving carefully, we've had the AC blasting, but with that efficiency, you would almost perfectly hit Hyundai's quoted range figure for both versions of this car. That equals about 185 miles of range for the smaller battery, or about 205 for the bigger battery version. Again, I'm not even trying. If you wanted to eke out more miles, you certainly could. That's quite nice, by the way, isn't it? A brand giving an actual accurate range figure for their cars instead of an up to range, which you'll never achieve. They've been positively conservative with their quoted range. Fair play, Hyundai. And actually, the fact that Hyundai have given a really honest, accurate range figure for their new electric car really epitomizes what I like about this brand. They're just so good at EVs. They're so practiced in them now, and you can tell from the fact that they get all the things right that so many of their rivals get wrong. Like the fact that this thing comes as standard with a heat pump, meaning the range isn't going to drop off a cliff during the winter months. Like it's got vehicle to load as standard. Like it doesn't beep at me incessantly despite having all the ADAS features that you would want in a new car. Or the fact that I've got nice strong regen braking that brings me to a complete stop. I can't stand it when electric cars don't have proper one pedal driving. Big cars, they're bad news for traffic, they're bad news for cyclists, they're bad news for pedestrians if one of them hits you. And they're not even very sustainable, even the electric ones, because they just require so much material to build. The problem is you can't shame people or bully people out of the big cars that they enjoy buying and driving. You have to show them a better way. And that's what this car is to me. It packs so much punch for its size that I truly believe that if you swapped out your giant, I don't know, Audi Q8 e-tron for one of these, you wouldn't miss a whole lot. It's just a fabulous little car, and I knew it was going to be good. As soon as I clapped eyes on it, my hopes were so high, and that's based on the sheer red-hot form that Hyundai have been on in recent years, but it's exceeded my expectations. I knew it would be good around town, I knew it would be stylish and charming, but I wasn't expecting it to feel so refined, so civilized at motorway speed, so beautifully put together, so comfortable and quiet. What a little machine. Well, normally this is the bit of the video where I give you my concluding thoughts, the bottom line, the verdict, but I sort of gave the game away at the start, didn't I? I am smitten by this car, and I hope I've done enough in this video to show you why. Hands down the best small, cheap electric car that we've seen to date. Not that there's been that many, but also one of the best small cars that I have ever driven, full stop. And look, I'm sick of saying this, you're probably sick of hearing it, but let's just take a moment to quickly acknowledge the form of Hyundai of late. Best electric family car, maybe best family car full stop, Ioniq 5. Most exciting electric car ever, Ioniq 5N, and now they've got the best small cheap one as well. In the 2010s, it was Tesla leading the way, blazing the trail, showing the other brands how it's done. But the 2020s, it's Hyundai's turn. So there we go, the Inster. Everything I hoped it would be, and more. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have been, thanks for watching.